My name is Victoria Martinez, and 6 months ago, my supervisor humiliated me in front of 47 international executives, destroyed my presentation that had taken 3 months to prepare, and told me to go back to basics because my strategy was ridiculously amateur. She stood behind the podium, announced to the entire room that my digital marketing proposal was a waste of time and resources, and then closed my laptop while the entire global leadership watched in absolute silence. What she didn't know was that among those 47 executives were 2 representatives from our fiercest competitor. And when my phone buzzed 90 seconds later with an offer of $800,000 annually to lead their marketing division in New York, I realized she had just handed me the perfect weapon for the most devastating revenge I could have ever planned. Before I tell you exactly how her arrogance became my ticket to financial and professional freedom, could you take a second to hit like and subscribe? Because what I'm about to share will show you how a moment of corporate cruelty can transform into the opportunity of your lifetime in ways that seem impossible until they happen in front of 47 witnesses. And trust me, you need to hear every detail of how a ridiculously amateur presentation ended up generating the biggest talent crisis in our industry's history. Let me take you to where it all really began. Because corporate revenge stories always start long before the revenge actually happens. 2 years ago, I joined Global Tech Innovations as a senior digital marketing specialist. The company was a multinational giant with offices in 23 countries, annual revenue of $2.8 billion, and a reputation for innovation that attracted the world's best talent. My job was to develop integrated digital marketing strategies that would work across all global divisions, a role that sounded exciting until I met my direct supervisor. Rebecca Williams was the global marketing director, a 52-year-old woman who had climbed the company ladder for 15 years through a combination of corporate politics and an impressive ability to take credit for others' work. From my first day, she made it clear that she considered digital marketing a passing fad that would eventually be replaced by more substantial marketing methods. In her world, effective campaigns required massive budgets, expensive external agencies, and strategies that prioritized brand visibility over measurable conversion. My approach was completely different. I believed that effective digital marketing was based on data, precise segmentation, and the ability to measure every dollar invested against specific results. While Rebecca approved $500,000 campaigns with advertising agencies that promised to increase brand awareness, I developed internal strategies that generated qualified leads for a fraction of the cost using marketing automation, strategic content marketing, and predictive consumer behavior analysis. During my first 6 months, my digital campaigns generated 340% more leads than Rebecca's traditional campaigns, with a 67% lower cost per acquisition. But instead of celebrating these results, Rebecca constantly minimized them. During our weekly meetings, she would review my performance reports with visible frustration. "Digital numbers are easy to manipulate," she would say, tapping her nails against the conference table. "Real marketing is measured in brand recognition and market presence, not clicks and conversions." I tried to show her how digital marketing could amplify her traditional campaigns, how we could integrate both approaches to maximize ROI. But Rebecca saw any suggestion as a threat to her authority and experience. For her, admitting that digital strategies were effective meant admitting she had been wrong for years about the future of marketing. The tension reached a critical point when our CEO, Michael Rodriguez, announced that the company needed to reduce marketing costs by 30% while maintaining or improving results. It was exactly the type of challenge for which digital marketing had been designed. I knew I could demonstrate how integrated digital strategies would not only meet that goal, but would probably improve our overall results. I spent 3 months developing what I considered the most important presentation of my career. It wasn't just a digital marketing proposal. It was a comprehensive plan that would show how the company could completely transform its marketing approach to be more efficient, more measurable, and more effective. I analyzed every campaign from the past 2 years, identified optimization opportunities, and created financial projections showing how we could achieve our cost reduction goals while increasing lead generation by 45%. The presentation included case studies from 12 comparable companies that had implemented similar transformations, detailed analysis of our target markets by region, and an 18-month implementation roadmap with specific milestones and success metrics. I had created interactive simulations showing how different levels of digital marketing investment would impact our quarterly results. It was, without exaggeration, the most complete and strategic work I had produced in my career. Michael scheduled a special meeting with the entire global leadership to review marketing optimization proposals. Executives from 23 countries would fly to our headquarters in Chicago for a full-day session where different departments would present their strategies for the next fiscal year. It was my opportunity to prove that digital marketing wasn't a passing fad, but the future of how smart companies would connect with their customers. Rebecca insisted on reviewing my presentation the night before the meeting. I arrived at her office at 8 p.m. with my laptop, portable projector, and 47 printed copies of my 23-page proposal. She sat behind her desk while I set up the presentation, with an expression that clearly communicated this was a bothersome formality she had to endure. For the first 10 minutes, she maintained a neutral expression while I explained the context and objectives. But when I reached the section showing how digital strategies could effectively replace many of our most expensive traditional campaigns, I saw her expression change to something more like controlled panic. "Stop," she said abruptly, raising her hand. "Are you suggesting we eliminate the traditional advertising campaigns that have been the foundation of our success?" I explained that I wasn't suggesting elimination, but optimization. I showed how we could maintain the most effective elements of our traditional campaigns while amplifying them with digital targeting that would increase their impact and reduce waste. But Rebecca had stopped listening. She was flipping through the printed pages with growing agitation. "This is exactly what I was worried about," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "You're proposing to dismantle 15 years of brand building to chase digital metrics that don't mean anything real." I tried to explain that digital metrics correlated directly with sales, that we had 18 months of data proving this connection. But she closed my laptop before I could show the correlation graphs. "Victoria," she said, with a tone she adopted when speaking to junior employees who didn't understand the real business. "Tomorrow you're going to present in front of our company's most senior executives. You need to understand that your proposal, as it stands, would make us look amateur. You're proposing that we abandon proven strategies for digital experiments that may or may not work." I showed her the results from my campaigns over the past 18 months, the leads, the conversions, the measurable ROI. But Rebecca had made a decision about my presentation before I entered her office. "You're going to modify this presentation," she announced, "or you're not presenting tomorrow. Choose 1 or 2 digital tactics as supplements to our main strategies, but eliminate all this fantasy about digital transformation and data-based optimization. The executives expect professionalism, not startup experiments." That night, I went home knowing I had to choose between compromising my most important work or facing the public humiliation that Rebecca was clearly planning. But I had invested too much in this presentation and believed too much in its potential to dilute it into a safe proposal that wouldn't change anything. I decided to present my complete proposal. The morning of the presentation, I arrived at the office 2 hours early to set everything up perfectly. The main conference room had been reorganized to accommodate the 47 executives who had flown in from Europe, Asia, North America, and South America. I had translated key sections of my presentation into Spanish, Portuguese, and French to ensure everyone could follow the technical details. Rebecca arrived 30 minutes before the meeting, saw my setup, and immediately knew I hadn't made the changes she had demanded. "I was hoping you had reconsidered your approach," she said, with a coldness that made me understand that what was about to happen would be worse than I had anticipated. "I trust my work," I replied, though my voice sounded less confident than I intended. Michael opened the meeting by welcoming me and explaining that my presentation represented an innovative approach to optimizing our marketing costs while improving results. I looked around the room full of regional directors, marketing VPs and CFOs who had traveled thousands of miles to hear strategies that could transform their local operations. I began my presentation confidently, explaining the context of the cost reduction challenge and how digital marketing could be the solution. The first 10 minutes were perfect. Several executives were taking notes. Some asked intelligent technical questions, and I could see genuine interest in their expressions. But when I reached the section showing how digital strategies could effectively replace expensive traditional campaigns, I noticed that Rebecca had stood up from her seat at the back of the room. "Excuse me," she said, interrupting my explanation about predictive analytics. "I think there are some important misunderstandings in this presentation that I need to clarify." The entire room turned toward her. Michael looked confused by the interruption, but nodded for her to continue. "Victoria is a talented specialist," Rebecca began, walking toward the front of the room. "But I'm concerned that her enthusiasm for digital tactics has led her to propose strategies that are fundamentally risky for a company of our scale and reputation." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. She was dismantling my presentation in front of 47 international executives, characterizing months of work as misdirected enthusiasm. "The strategies you're seeing," she continued, pointing at my projected presentation, "might work for startups or small companies that can afford to experiment. But we have built our brand through proven methods that have generated billions in revenue." I tried to intervene, to explain that my proposal was based on data from our own company, not theoretical experiments. But Rebecca raised her hand to silence me. "Victoria, I appreciate your passion, but you need to understand that when you present in front of executives of this level, you need proposals that are realistic and appropriate for our corporate context. Your approach is too basic, too simplistic for the complex challenges we face." The word basic resonated through the entire room like a slap. I had spent 3 months developing the most sophisticated proposal of my career, and she was characterizing it as amateur in front of the global leadership. "I think it would be better if Victoria went back to basics," she announced, walking toward my laptop. "Developed more modest proposals that complement our main strategies instead of trying to reinvent our complete approach." And then she did something I never expected. She closed my laptop, disconnected the projector, and effectively ended my presentation in front of all the executives who had traveled to hear my proposal. "We can continue with the rest of the agenda," she said, turning toward Michael. "I have some more realistic proposals to discuss." The silence in the room was absolute. 47 senior executives watched as my supervisor publicly humiliated me and discarded months of work as if it were amateur garbage. I stood next to the disconnected projector with my interrupted presentation, feeling like I was in a nightmare. But then something happened that would change everything. My phone, which I had put on silent mode but hadn't completely turned off, began vibrating in my pocket. Normally, I would have ignored any call during a presentation, but in that moment of total humiliation, I needed any excuse to get out of that room. "Excuse me," I mumbled. "I have to take this." I left the conference room with trembling hands, expecting it to be my assistant or some vendor with a routine question. Instead, the voice on the other end was David Thompson, Global Marketing Director of Innovate Tech Solutions, our most direct and aggressive competitor. "Victoria," he said, "we need to talk immediately. We're in your building's lobby." My confusion must have been evident in my silence because he continued explaining. "Sarah Chen and I were in that meeting as Roberto's guests. We're part of an industrial collaboration initiative he's exploring. We just heard what happened in that room, and we need to offer you something you can't refuse." Sarah Chen was the CEO of Innovate Tech Solutions, one of the most respected executives in our industry, known for transforming traditional companies into digital powerhouses. If she was in my building, waiting to talk to me after witnessing my public humiliation, something extraordinary was about to happen. "Come down to the lobby in 5 minutes," David said. "You just demonstrated exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need to lead our new digital marketing division in New York. We're prepared to offer you $800,000 annually, plus equity, plus complete autonomy to implement exactly the strategy your supervisor just rejected." The irony was almost too perfect to be real. While Rebecca was upstairs explaining why my proposal was too basic for our company, the competition had immediately recognized its value and was prepared to offer me almost triple my current salary to implement it. "Can you come down now?" Sarah asked, taking the phone. "We have a plane waiting to take you to New York this afternoon if you decide to accept. We want you to start implementing your strategy next week." I looked toward the conference room where Rebecca was probably explaining why digital strategies were inadequate for serious companies, while 47 executives who had traveled to hear my presentation wondered what had happened exactly. "Yes," I said. "I'll be down in 2 minutes." The conversation that followed in the lobby would change not only my life, but the entire competitive dynamic of our industry. Sarah and David had been observing our marketing performance for months, noticing how our digital campaigns were significantly outperforming the traditional ones. They had requested to be present at the meeting specifically to understand what strategies we were using. "We expected to hear about some external consultant or specialized agency," Sarah explained. "We never imagined that one person had developed that entire approach internally. When we saw how your supervisor destroyed your presentation, we realized your company doesn't value what it has." They offered me not only the salary, but the opportunity to build a digital marketing division from scratch, with an initial budget of $50 million and the authority to hire a team of 30 people. More importantly, they gave me something I had never had: executives who understood and valued exactly the type of strategy that Rebecca had rejected as basic. "We want you to implement your proposal exactly as you presented it," David said. "No modifications, no compromises, no supervisors who don't understand digital marketing. You'll report directly to Sarah and have complete autonomy to prove that your approach can transform a company." I signed the contract that same afternoon. But the real satisfaction didn't come from the money or the opportunity. It came from what happened when I returned to that conference room to collect my laptop and submit my resignation. Rebecca was finishing her presentation about proven marketing strategies when I entered. Michael saw me and paused the discussion. "Victoria, we were hoping you'd return to continue your presentation." "Actually," I said, connecting my laptop to show my presentation one last time, "I have an announcement to make." I projected the first page of my proposal, the same one Rebecca had characterized as basic 30 minutes earlier. Then I looked directly at the 47 executives who had traveled to hear innovative strategies. "I resign from Global Tech Innovations, effective immediately," I announced. "I'm joining Innovate Tech Solutions as Digital Marketing Director with a $50 million budget to implement exactly the strategy you just rejected as too basic for this company." The silence in the room was different this time. It wasn't the discomfort of witnessing humiliation. It was the tension of understanding that something significant had just changed. "Innovate Tech Solutions," I continued, "just offered me the opportunity to prove that digital strategies can transform traditional companies, exactly as I proposed an hour ago. I'll begin implementation next week." Michael looked confused and alarmed. "Victoria, I think we should discuss this privately before making precipitous decisions." "There's nothing to discuss," I replied, disconnecting my laptop. "My decision is final. I'll submit my formal resignation this afternoon." As I walked toward the exit, I could feel 47 pairs of eyes following my movements. Some executives looked surprised, others impressed, and several seemed to be reconsidering their own evaluations of my proposal. Rebecca called out to me, with a voice that sounded less confident than usual. "You're making a huge mistake. Innovate Tech is our direct competitor. This could be considered a violation of your confidentiality agreement." I stopped at the door and turned to look at her. "My confidentiality agreement protects proprietary information. The digital marketing strategies I developed are based on industry best practices and my professional experience. There's no legal violation in applying general knowledge at a new company. Besides," I added, seeing the growing panic in her expression, "according to my contract, I have the right to immediate resignation in cases of hostile work environment or professional sabotage. Humiliating an employee in front of 47 international executives and characterizing their work as basic without technical justification qualifies in both categories." The beauty of what happened next wasn't that I had planned some elaborate revenge scheme. The beauty was that Rebecca had created the entire situation through her own arrogance and lack of vision. In the following 48 hours, as I moved to New York and began building my new team, the story of what had happened in that conference room spread throughout the industry. The 47 executives who had witnessed my public humiliation had also seen how the competition immediately recruited me afterward, which completely validated my rejected proposal. Several of those executives contacted Michael directly to express their concern about the decision to reject strategies that clearly had enough value for the competition to offer $800,000 to implement them. Some mentioned that their regions had been considering adopting digital marketing approaches similar to what I had proposed. But the real validation came when I began implementing my strategy at Innovate Tech Solutions. We had immediate competitive advantage because I knew exactly the weaknesses in my former company's marketing approach. I knew which campaigns were inefficient, which markets were poorly served, and which clients were dissatisfied with the level of digital engagement. In my first month, I developed campaigns that directly attacked the inefficiencies I had identified during my 2 years at Global Tech Innovations. I didn't violate any confidentiality agreements, but I did apply my deep understanding of market opportunities to create strategies that systematically outperformed my former company. The results were devastating for the competition. Within 90 days, our digital campaigns had captured 34% more market share in key segments, with a 58% lower acquisition cost than Global Tech Innovations' traditional campaigns. We had not only proven that my basic approach was superior, we had demonstrated that rejecting it had been a costly strategic error. Meanwhile, Rebecca was facing the consequences of her decision to sabotage my presentation. Michael had received enough questions from regional executives about the lost talent that he had called for a complete review of the company's marketing strategies. According to contacts who still worked there, the review had revealed that my digital campaigns had been generating 67% more ROI than Rebecca's traditional campaigns. The irony was perfect. While she had been criticizing my digital metrics as easy to manipulate, her own campaigns had been systematically underperforming according to any objective metric. 3 months after my departure, Michael contacted me personally. "Victoria," he said, "I think there were misunderstandings about your presentation. We're reconsidering our digital marketing approach and would like to discuss the possibility of you returning as digital marketing director with complete autonomy." The offer was impressive. $650,000 annually, plus equity, plus the authority to implement exactly the strategy Rebecca had rejected as basic. He also mentioned they were re-evaluating the marketing department leadership. "Michael," I told him, "I appreciate the offer, but I'm building something incredible here." Innovate Tech understood the value of my approach from day one, instead of needing to learn its value after losing market share. Besides, I added, my basic strategy just generated the most successful quarter in Innovate Tech's history, while I heard that Global Tech Innovations is losing clients to competitors who use exactly the digital tactics Rebecca rejected. Michael ended the call with a formal apology for miscommunications and a request that I consider future consulting options. But I had already moved from being an underestimated employee to being a respected industry executive. The story of my public humiliation had become a case study about how not to handle talent and innovation in established companies. I received invitations to speak at conferences about digital transformation leadership and managing innovation in traditional companies. My rejected presentation had become the foundation of a new division that was redefining competition throughout the industry. 6 months after Rebecca closed my laptop in front of 47 international executives, she was repositioned to an internal consulting role without authority over teams or budgets. The company had implemented many of the strategies I had proposed, but under the leadership of expensive external consultants who charged 10 times more for the same work I had been doing internally. Today, 1 year after hearing "go back to basics" in that conference room, I lead a division of 45 people that generates $200 million annually in attributable revenue. My basic strategy has become the model that other companies study to transform their own marketing operations. And every day, when I review reports showing how our digital campaigns continue to outperform traditional strategies, I remember that the best revenge against people who underestimate your work is simply proving they were wrong through your success elsewhere. Rebecca thought she was protecting her department from basic experiments when she sabotaged my presentation. What she really did was hand our competitive advantage to the competition and demonstrate that the real amateur in that room was her, not me. Sometimes, the most satisfying revenge is simply letting people experience the natural consequences of their own arrogance while you build something better somewhere else. And if this story resonated with you, or if you've ever been underestimated by supervisors who didn't understand your value, I'd love to read about it in the comments. The best therapy for professional humiliation is knowing you're not alone, and that every go back to basics is really an opportunity to prove your work was never basic in the first place.